Okay, so I am going to be doing a herringbone in this hallway. I got the Ditra down all the way around here, and I laid it out so that I can get the best pieces I can. So what I'm going to do is start with a full tile on this wall here, and that ends up giving me a decent piece over here, all around. I actually laid out some tiles to see where it's going to fall, and I have this laser square to help me stay straight. What you do is you line it up with all the corners, so that way you know you're staying square. And so I'm going to try fit a few of these, and then I'm going to start cementing down. Okay, so I got some of the tile cut in. I'm going to go under the bench tomorrow. It's just too hot to get under there right now. And I put these blocks of wood here so I can push against it and make sure that I'm in the right spot. Okay, so because this is I'm going over Schluter Ditra, I'm using an unmodified thin set. This is a premium unmodified thin set. Anytime you're installing tile, you never want to buy the cheapest thin set you can find. You actually want to buy a good quality premium thin set, so that way you know the tile is going to be adhered properly to whatever substrate you're going over. Now, because these are large format tiles, I'm using a 1/2-inch square notch trowel, and also another reason is because I'm going to be using the T-lock tile lippage system. It's called a leveling system, but I really like to call it a lippage system instead. And that helps with height differential between tiles. In other words, it helps bring the tiles into the same plane. Okay, so I'm using the Ditra uncoupling membrane here, and I'm using the flat side of the trowel to completely fill all the depressions or waffles or whatever you want to call them, to make sure that they are completely filled. So I have several videos explaining exactly how Ditra works. I'll put a link to one of those in the description below. But you just want to make sure that you completely fill all the voids in the Ditra so that you get proper bonding of the tile to the Ditra. So as much as possible, you want to try and get the ridges of the trowel lines all in one direction, so that it makes it easier to collapse those ridges and get good coverage on the back of the tile. If you've got swirls or you've got the things that go in all kinds of directions, it makes it more difficult to get a good coverage on the back of the tile. Sometimes it's not easy because of the space or whatever reason, but as much as possible you want to try and get them all to go the same way. So you can't see me doing it in this shot, but I always back butter my tiles with the flat side of the trowel. Sometimes I'll even use a notch side, but you need to back butter your tiles to make sure that you get good coverage and good adhesion of the tile to that substrate. Some people might disagree with that, but I just feel it's much better to back butter and get to ensure proper coverage and transfer of the thin set to the tile. That's actually referred to as keying in the thin set or burning in the thin set to the back of the tile. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I'm using the T-lock tile lippage system for this floor, and I actually have a couple of videos that explain how that works as well, and I'll also put a link to that in the description below. Okay, so this floor, as you noticed, is on a herringbone pattern. So this can be actually a very difficult pattern to install, especially when you're doing all the cuts around the walls and whatever obstacle you come across. But one of the most important things that you have to keep in mind is to keep everything perfectly square. And the longer the tiles are that you're installing, the harder that can become. So you just try and keep everything square and use whatever aid you can to help you. I have those blocks of wood at my knees there to help me keep. So when I started, I knew exactly where to put the tile. And as you can see, I'll zoom in on a second. There's a line, that goes across the board and down across the tile. That was so that I knew exactly where to place my first piece. So just just want to make sure that you stay as straight and square as possible, so that you don't run off and start getting grout lines that get wider and wider and wider. Okay, so here it is from another angle. So I'm just okay. Once I get a few tiles down, I'm gonna start putting the wedges in to lock all the tiles in place and remove any lippage there might be. Okay, so a lot of tile guys feel that leveling systems or lippage systems or whatever you want to call them are a waste of time and effort and money. I disagree with that. Large format tiles pretty much always cupped. They're never perfectly flat. So when you put the tiles together, it's sometimes very difficult to get the tiles to be perfectly in the same plane. And what a lippage system will do is actually lock those two tiles together and pull them into plane. Also, another thing to consider is with the long tiles, small variation in angle on one end of the tile will translate to a much larger variation at the other end of the tile. So with the lippage system, that will bring all those variations into the correct position. Okay, so I have a few tiles down now. So I'm going to put the wedges in. And another benefit of using a leveling system is that you actually lock all the tiles in place so that they won't move as you're working. Continue to work down, further down the hallway or room or whatever you work on. So I'm going to clean up a little bit, put these little pieces in, and then move back towards where I am now. Okay, so just for anyone that might be considering a herringbone pattern, just be aware it's going to be much more time consuming, much more difficult to measure the cuts, and it's going to go a lot slower. So just be prepared for that if you decide that you're going to go with a herringbone pattern. And a lot of times, even myself, I'll just lay a few tiles and mark them, measure them, and then cut them and fit them in before I spread any cement, so that I know everything's going to fit. If you try and do it while you're spreading the cement, it's just going to be very messy. If you're laying on a floor that's just square and it's not a diagonal, or it's just a square tile on a diagonal, that's fine. You can do that. But when it's a herringbone and you've got a lot of difficult cuts, sometimes it's just easier to do a dry lay for a few tiles, and then spread the cement, and then cement them down. Okay, so this portion of the floor has set overnight. I'm going to remove the clips, clean up, and then continue tiling the rest of the floor. Okay, so I've dry laid and cut in all these pieces that go into the bathroom. I am going to now number all the cut pieces so I know exactly where they go when I pick them up. And then I'm going to pick up these tiles and then cement them down. Okay, so as I did before in that other section of floor, I've put these boards down here as a reference of where to start my tile and to hold them in place as I work. And I'm just going to continue putting the tiles that are already cut and put them all in place. Okay, so where the tile meets an already installed baseboard, I'm going to caulk it so there's a soft joint where, so there's the soft joint allows the tile to move in and out against the baseboard. Where the baseboard is missing, obviously it's going to sit on top of the tile and it's not going to need to be caulked. I actually prefer that the baseboard is left off and then put on top of the tile, but sometimes it's hard to get a general contractor to agree to that, so you just got to have to deal with it. But if you're doing it yourself, I recommend that you put the baseboard on top of the tile so that there is room for movement for the tile. Okay, so what remains after the tiles install obviously is grout, and I have also a couple of videos explaining how to do that, and I'll put a link to that also in the description. And once that's done, clean up, floor's all done. Okay, so this is the end result. Obviously the carpenter has a few things to finish up in here, but as far as I'm concerned, I am all done.